Stop, don't scroll. Because what you are about to hear is not another headline. It is not another diplomatic statement wrapped in polite language and buried beneath press conferences and carefully chosen words. This is about a line. A final line, and what happens when that line is crossed. For years, tension between NATO and Russia has simmered beneath the surface of global politics. Sanctions, military drills, proxy conflicts, strategic warnings. Each side testing the other, each move calculated, each response measured. But this time feels different. This time the warning carries weight. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, an alliance born in 1949 to contain Soviet expansion, has issued what many analysts describe as its clearest and most unified message yet. And the target of that message is Moscow. The question is no longer whether tensions are rising. The question is whether we are approaching the final threshold before escalation. NATO was formed in the aftermath of World War II, when Europe lay shattered and exhausted. The idea was simple but powerful. An attack on one member would be considered an attack on all. Collective defense. Strategic deterrence. A shield built not of walls but of unity. For decades that shield held firm. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union and NATO stood on opposite sides of an ideological divide. Nuclear weapons kept both sides cautious. Proxy wars were fought elsewhere. Lines were drawn carefully. Then, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. Many believed history had turned a page. Russia emerged weakened, fragmented, economically unstable. NATO expanded eastward, absorbing former Warsaw Pact nations. To Moscow, this expansion was not a gesture of stability. It was encroachment. From the Baltic states to Eastern Europe, the alliance moved closer to Russia's borders. Each expansion defended as voluntary. Each move justified as sovereign choice. But in the Kremlin, the narrative hardened. Encirclement, strategic pressure, containment reborn. The turning point came in 2014. Crimea, annexation, sanctions, trust fractured. And the idea of a post-Cold War peace began to unravel. Fast forward to today. The war in Ukraine reshaped the European security landscape overnight. NATO, once criticized as fragmented and divided, suddenly found renewed purpose. Defense budgets surged. Troops were repositioned. Finland and Sweden, historically neutral, sought membership. The alliance expanded again. From Moscow's perspective, the pressure intensified. From NATO's perspective, deterrence had to be reinforced. The final warning did not arrive in a single explosive statement. It emerged through coordinated speeches, strategic deployments, and unmistakable military signals. Advanced air defense systems moved closer to Eastern Europe. Rapid response forces were placed on high readiness. Joint exercises intensified along NATO's eastern flank. And the message was clear. Any direct attack on a NATO member would trigger Article 5. Collective defense. No ambiguity. No hesitation. But why now? Because escalation risks are no longer theoretical. Cyberattacks targeting critical infrastructure. Allegations of sabotage in European energy networks. Airspace violations. Naval encounters in the Baltic and Black Seas. Each incident small enough to avoid full-scale war. Each incident dangerous enough to push boundaries. The concern inside NATO headquarters is not a massive invasion, it is miscalculation. A missile that lands across a border. A drone strike that hits the wrong target. A cyber operation that disables civilian systems. Modern warfare is no longer limited to tanks crossing plains. It is hybrid, digital, invisible until it is not. And that makes deterrence more complex than ever. Russia, for its part, sees NATO's posture as aggressive. Moscow argues that Western weapons flowing into Ukraine transform the alliance from observer to participant. It frames NATO expansion as strategic provocation. The narratives collide. One side claims defense. The other claims containment. In reality, both sides are acting from strategic fear. NATO fears a Europe where borders can be changed by force. Russia fears a future where Western military infrastructure surrounds it completely. Between those fears lies the risk of confrontation. Energy plays a silent but critical role in this standoff. Europe's dependence on Russian gas once acted as a stabilizing economic bridge. That bridge has largely collapsed. Supply chains shifted. New energy corridors emerged. Economic interdependence. The most dangerous scenario is not deliberate war. It is unintended escalation. During the Cold War, communication hotlines existed precisely to prevent this. Today, communication channels are thinner. Trust is lower, suspicion is higher. Military exercises are watched closely. Satellite imagery analyzed in real time. Troop movements tracked digitally. In this environment, a single misinterpreted signal can cascade rapidly. NATO's final warning aims to reduce ambiguity. It says, "We are prepared," but preparedness carries its own risks. Troops positioned closer to potential flashpoints increase readiness, but also proximity. Proximity increases probability. Probability increases danger. Russia, aware of NATO's capabilities, relies heavily on strategic nuclear deterrence as its ultimate shield. The presence of nuclear weapons on both sides imposes a ceiling on escalation. But nuclear deterrence is only stable when rational calculation prevails. The uncertainty lies in perception. If one side believes the other is preparing a first strike, even if it is not, the logic shifts. This is the fragile equilibrium of modern geopolitics. NATO's final warning also serves another purpose: reassurance. Eastern European members, particularly those bordering Russia, demand visible commitment. For them, the threat is not theoretical. It is geographic. Their security depends on belief. Belief that the alliance will respond instantly. Belief that Article 5 is not symbolic. Belief that unity holds under pressure. Without that belief, internal fractures could appear. And fractures are invitations. Russia understands this dynamic deeply. Strategic messaging, information campaigns, and political influence operations aim to exploit divisions within Western societies. If NATO fractures internally, the warning loses strength. If unity holds, the warning hardens. But unity is not static. It must be maintained. At the same time, Moscow faces its own pressures. Prolonged military engagement strains resources. Demographics challenge long-term manpower. Economic restructuring takes time. Domestic narratives must remain controlled. A drawn-out standoff is costly for both sides, yet neither side can afford to appear weak. This is the paradox. Strength must be displayed, but not pushed too far. Resolve must be clear, but not provocative. Deterrence must be credible, but not triggering. The final warning, therefore, is less a single statement and more a calibrated posture. It is troop deployments combined with diplomatic language. It is sanctions combined with back-channel talks. It is public firmness paired with private caution. Some analysts argue we are entering a new Cold War. Others reject the comparison, noting that today's world is multipolar. China rises. Regional powers assert themselves. The global economy is interconnected in ways unimaginable in 1962, and yet, competing narratives of legitimacy. The Baltic Sea has become a strategic corridor once again. The Arctic, newly accessible due to climate shifts, opens additional fronts for strategic competition. Space and cyberspace add new domains to the equation. It extends to satellites, to fiber optic cables, to digital infrastructure. Modern conflict is multi-domain. Russia's doctrine acknowledges this, so does NATO's. The risk, therefore, is not a single battlefield clash. It is simultaneous pressure across multiple domains. Energy disruption combined with cyber attacks. Disinformation combined with military exercises. Economic leverage combined with covert action, each below the threshold of war. Each testing the threshold. This gray zone is where the most dangerous games are played, and in gray zones, clarity is rare. The final warning attempts to inject clarity. That definition remains intentionally flexible. Strategic ambiguity can deter, but it can also confuse. As defense budgets rise across Europe, a long-term shift is underway. NATO is transitioning from expeditionary missions abroad to territorial defense at home. Fortifications, rapid mobility corridors, pre-positioned equipment. The architecture of deterrence is being rebuilt. This signals that the alliance anticipates prolonged tension. Not a brief crisis, a structural shift. Russia, too, is recalibrating. Military reforms accelerate. Defense production expands. Partnerships deepen outside the Western sphere. Neither side appears prepared to retreat, which means the standoff stabilizes into endurance. The final warning, then, is about boundaries within endurance. It says, compete if you must, but do not cross this line. History teaches that great power conflicts rarely begin with declarations. They begin with assumptions, misjudgments, overconfidence. In 1914, Alliances meant to preserve peace cascaded into world war. Today, alliances are again central. The difference is nuclear deterrence. The difference is global economic integration. The difference is instantaneous information. But human psychology remains constant: fear, pride, security, power. NATO's message to Russia is ultimately about balance. A balance between deterrence and restraint. Between unity and escalation. Between warning and provocation. The world watches carefully. Markets respond subtly. Defense industries expand quietly. Diplomats work behind closed doors. And ordinary citizens continue daily life unaware of how close the machinery of power moves beneath the surface. Will this warning hold? Will deterrence succeed? Or will history record this moment as the calm before a greater storm? No one can answer with certainty. But one fact is clear. The lines have been drawn more sharply than at any time in recent memory. The alliance stands firm. Russia stands defiant. And between them lies a continent shaped by centuries of conflict and cooperation. The final warning is not a countdown. It is a statement of resolve. A declaration that certain thresholds will not be crossed without consequence. Whether that declaration prevents catastrophe or accelerates confrontation depends on decisions still unfolding. In geopolitics, the most powerful weapons are not always missiles or tanks. Sometimes they are signals. Signals understood. Signals misread. Signals ignored. And right now, the signal has been sent. The world waits to see how it will be answered.